Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered, what else is out there, just beyond what we can see? Because tonight, we follow whispers. Whispers of something ancient and spectral, lurking in the quiet corners of Earth's orbit. Not made of stone, not made of light, but of dust. Drifting in silence, fading in and out like ghosts. Welcome to Mysterious Universe. And if you're new here, subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay close. Because what you're about to discover has haunted astronomers for over 6 decades. They're called ghost moons. Not metaphorically, literally. Vast, faint clouds of cosmic dust said to hover near Earth, yet nearly impossible to detect. Some scientists have seen them. Some say they don't exist at all. But if they're real, these ghost moons may be 9 times wider than Earth and older than the oldest fossils in our soil. They live at strange, stable points between the Earth and the Moon, gravitational dead zones where dust can drift without falling. These clouds were first glimpsed in 1961 by a Polish astronomer staring into a telescope who saw something that looked like clouds, but in the vacuum of space. Since then, the mystery has never settled. Some images suggest they're there. Other observations come up empty. A few missions even tried to fly through them, with nothing to show for it. But in recent years, thanks to polarized imaging and modern simulations, we may finally have proof that these elusive companions are not fantasy, but fact. In this episode, we dive deep into one of the eeriest unsolved puzzles orbiting our planet. A tale of vanishing dust, skeptical eyes, and perhaps a secret dance between the Earth and ancient shadows it never truly left behind. Strap in, because once you see what's out there, you may never look at the night sky the same way again. In 1961, beneath the quiet skies of Poland, astronomer Kazimierz Kordylewski peered through his telescope and saw something unexpected. Hanging in the darkness, not stars, not planets, not even comets, but faint, ghostly clouds. They shimmered, barely there, like breath on glass. He had been studying 2 special regions of space, areas now known as the L4 and L5 Lagrange points, places where gravity, motion, and mass strike a delicate celestial balance. These weren't random spots. They formed an invisible triangle with the Earth and the Moon, and under the right conditions, objects could rest there, suspended, untouched. It was in these gravitational sanctuaries that Kordylewski claimed to see something that would spark 6 decades of mystery. Wisps of dust, floating in eerie stillness, orbiting not the Earth itself, but the equilibrium around it. He believed he had found something ancient and strange. Ghost moons, massive yet intangible, invisible to the eye, yet real enough to leave a mark on our understanding of the heavens. At first, the astronomical community didn't know what to make of Kordylewski's claim. The idea of enormous clouds, potentially 9 times the width of Earth, existing so close to home yet undetected, it felt like fantasy. And yet, others began to look. Telescopes turned toward the L4 and L5 points, searching for shadows among shadows. Some reported faint glimmers, subtle changes in light intensity, something that hinted at presence. But many others saw nothing, no trace, no cloud, just the vast, indifferent blackness of space. The problem wasn't belief, it was technology. In the 1960s, capturing something that dim required extreme patience and specialized techniques. Observers had to use long-exposure glass plates, balancing light, contrast, and angle just right. Even when photos were taken, the images were too faint to publish, too delicate to prove. And so the ghost moons slipped between doubt and desire. Too unreal for certainty, too persistent to ignore. But science doesn't rest. In 1966, NASA sent a jet far above city lights and human interference to hunt for what had eluded so many. The mission used the Convair 990 aircraft, flying at 12,000 meters, where the air is thin and the sky pure. There they aimed their instruments at L4 and L5, and they saw them. Faint, fleeting, but real. Dust clouds, reflecting light in a way that matched Kordylewski's original observations. That same year, the OS-06 Solar Observatory also recorded brightness data in the same regions. It seemed, at last, that the ghost moons were stepping into the light. And yet the mystery only deepened. Because while some instruments could detect them, others could not. Some nights they appeared. Other nights, nothing. Were they illusions? Or did they truly exist, constantly forming and unraveling in a cosmic rhythm we still don't fully understand? To understand why these clouds might even exist, we need to travel into the concept of cosmic balance. The Lagrange points, named after the 18th century mathematician Joseph Louis Lagrange. These are 5 unique places in a two-body system, like the Earth and the Moon, where gravitational forces and orbital motion reach perfect equilibrium. While L1, L2, and L3 are inherently unstable, like marbles balanced on the tip of a pyramid, L4 and L5 are different. They form equilateral triangles with the Earth and Moon and create pockets of stability. A dust grain placed there, under just the right conditions, can float for decades, even centuries, without drifting away. These aren't just points in space. They are cosmic havens, safe zones where gravity lets go just enough to let something rest. And that's exactly where Kordylewski saw his clouds. It made sense. If there were ever a place for ghost moons to linger, it would be here. But equilibrium doesn't mean permanence. Over the years, skeptics raised their voices. In 1976, numerical simulations from the Max Planck Institute cast doubt on the cloud's stability. The sun's gravitational tug, the relentless pressure of the solar wind, even the slight fluctuations caused by nearby planets, all these forces, they argued, should scatter the dust too easily. And then came the observational drought. Radar sweeps found nothing. A 1983 survey using a 61-centimeter telescope in Arizona turned up no trace of the ghost moons. For many, that was the final nail. They declared the clouds gone, if they'd ever existed at all. But like all good ghost stories, just when you think it's over, something stirs. In 1989, from a remote observatory in the Polish mountains, astronomer Zbigniew Winiarski captured them again. Not just in black and white, but in color. His 3-color photometric plates revealed something startling. The clouds weren't like the background dust of space. They were redder, richer, as if composed of something different. That redness wasn't just aesthetic. It meant the clouds might have a unique composition. Unlike the pale counterglow of sunlight scattered by ordinary space dust, the ghost moons seemed to reflect light in a way that suggested their material came from a different origin. Not solar detritus, but perhaps ancient lunar ejecta, or even remnants from early Earth impacts. But then, once again, the trail went cold. In 1991, Japan's Haiten spacecraft did a flyby around L4 and L5. It searched for dust using sensitive instruments and came up empty. Critics jumped at the result. No dust, no clouds, no mystery. But supporters pointed out Haiten only did a single pass. If the clouds are dynamic, shifting, and thinly spread, a narrow flyby might miss them entirely. After all, each cloud, if real, stretches over 100,000 kilometers wide, but holds dust so sparse, each grain smaller than a single bacterium. Not exactly easy to catch. The debate was far from over. It was only getting more subtle and more strange. The turning point came not from space, but from Earth. From a camera, yes, but not an ordinary one. In 2018, astronomer Judith Slees-Balog and physicists Gabor Horvath and Andras Barta used a technique known as polarized imaging, a method that doesn't just record light, but the way light behaves when it bounces off certain materials. Dust, when struck by sunlight, scatters in a distinct pattern. And if you can read that pattern, you can see things the naked eye, or even regular telescopes, can't. Over a series of observations, they filtered starlight through a complex arrangement of polarizers, isolating only the scattered rays. What emerged from the data wasn't speculation. It was a signature, a fingerprint. And it matched precisely what theory predicted for a dust cloud at the L5 point. Suddenly, the ghost was no longer invisible. It shimmered back into the conversation, not as myth, but as measurable truth. But they didn't stop at light. To be sure of what they'd seen, the team built a model. A digital echo of space, filled with over 1.8 million virtual dust particles, set loose to drift under the gravitational influences of the Earth, Moon, and Sun. They let the simulation run, watched the dance of forces unfold in silence. And what they saw mirrored reality. Under the right conditions, tiny particles could become trapped at the L5 Lagrange point. Not forever, but long enough. They would slowly swirl, gather, scatter, and return, forming a loose, ever-changing veil. The simulation revealed something profound. The ghost moon wasn't a solid mass, but a living structure. It wasn't stable, yet it wasn't chaos either. It behaved like a breath, expanding, thinning, reforming in rhythm with the moon's orbit. Not a permanent monument, but a recurring presence, a celestial echo caught in the balance of invisible tides. So why all the confusion? Why could some astronomers see the ghost moons while others couldn't? The answer lies in scale. These clouds are vast, stretching over 100,000 kilometers wide, nearly 9 times Earth's diameter, but they're made of the tiniest things imaginable. Micron-sized particles, smaller than a red blood cell, spread so thinly across space that even a strong telescope might miss them unless everything lines up just right. Imagine trying to photograph a fog made of glitter, spread across the ocean, from a plane flying overhead. That's what scientists were up against. And now, thanks to polarized imaging, we know the dust is there. But it's not still. It moves. It fades. It returns. A dynamic entity caught between presence and absence. That's what makes the ghost moons so eerie. Not just what they are, but the way they slip in and out of reality, like memories that vanish the moment you reach for them. New data revealed that the ghost moon isn't just elusive, it's alive in its own peculiar way. The simulations showed the L5 dust cloud as non-uniform, its density pulsing in tune with the moon's orbit. Like a tide of celestial mist, its particles shift positions, building up in some places while thinning in others. It's not a fixed object. It's a process, a phenomenon, a slow-motion storm of invisible debris. Solar winds, gravitational tugs from nearby planets, and even subtle shifts in the moon's path may break it apart, only for it to gather again. The ghost moons aren't failing to appear. They're always there. But they change too fast for old instruments to see, and too slow for the human eye to notice. They live on the edge of perception, just beyond certainty, just inside possibility. And yet the L5 cloud might only be half the story. The L4 point, equally stable, has been studied far less. For decades, researchers prioritized L5 because early evidence was stronger. But what if another ghost is hiding in plain sight? What if we've been watching only one side of a pair, like trying to understand a story with just one chapter? Today's scientists are beginning to ask new questions. Could L4 hold a similar dust structure? Does it flicker into visibility on a separate cycle? Could both clouds affect our space missions, disturb delicate satellite orbits, or even shape space weather patterns in subtle ways? We've spent 60 years chasing shadows, but now, with modern simulations and filtered light, we're finally building maps of things we once called illusions. And what those maps reveal is stunning. Our planet's orbit may not be as empty as we thought, but these ghostly clouds aren't the only moons that Earth hides. Over the past few decades, astronomers have identified quasi-moons and mini-moons, celestial companions that mimic lunar orbits without truly belonging to us. Some are tiny asteroids caught in Earth's gravity, circling us for months or years before slipping away. One, named 2020 CD3, was captured in 2019 and quietly orbited Earth until mid-2020, before vanishing back into space. Others follow strange, looping paths that make them look like moons from some angles, even though they orbit the Sun, not our planet. Compared to these rocky visitors, the Kordylewski Dust Clouds are something entirely different. They are not objects. They are atmospheres. They are made of whispers, of particles too small to touch, too vast to grasp. Yet they remain, ancient, persistent, shifting. In some ways, they're more haunting than any moon we've ever had, because they don't follow a clear path. They appear when we least expect, and they remind us that not everything real needs to cast a shadow. By 2018, the ghost moons were no longer just a legend whispered in astronomy circles. The polarized light matched the models. The simulations recreated their dance, even their dynamic nature. Their tendency to appear, dissolve, and reform was no longer a mystery, but a predicted behavior. It was as if the clouds had been waiting for us to catch up. And yet, mysteries remain. Do these clouds form from ancient collisions? Are they seeded by lunar dust, or are they the final breath of comets long evaporated? Are they remnants of an earlier Earth-Moon relationship? Fossil echoes of a time when our sky held more than one face? Every answer sparks more questions. And maybe that's the point. These clouds don't just orbit our planet. They orbit our imagination. They remind us that space isn't just a place of light and mass, but of thresholds, between what is seen and what is sensed. There is something deeply human in our obsession with these faint clouds. We chase them not just because they're real, but because they're nearly not. They flicker at the edge of understanding, just visible enough to be undeniable, just elusive enough to feel like myth. And in that liminal space between science and story, something beautiful happens. We rediscover wonder, because if dust can hide at the edge of gravity, what else have we overlooked? What else is slipping between the frames of our telescopes, our sensors, our beliefs? Perhaps the ghost moons aren't an anomaly. Perhaps they are a message, that the universe is not only made of stars and laws and particles, but of questions. Deep ones, beautiful ones, ones that flicker like faint light in the dark and pull us closer, not with certainty, but with curiosity. Today, most astronomers accept that something is out there at L5, something real, if delicate. The dust clouds are no longer dismissed. They're studied, modeled, measured, and now we stand on the edge of deeper exploration. New generations of spacecraft, equipped with advanced detectors, may one day fly straight through these ghost moons, taking samples, capturing motion, witnessing the breath of cosmic time. What began as a curious sighting in 1961 has evolved into one of the most poetic truths of our Earth-Moon system, that even in the quietest orbits, something ancient moves, not in silence, but in rhythm, not forgotten, but waiting. And as we peer closer, armed with science and wonder alike, we realize the truth isn't out there in spite of the mystery, it's born from it. In chasing the ghost moons, we haven't just found dust. We've found a mirror, reflecting back our hunger to see the unseen. Some mysteries thunder into our awareness with bright lights and sharp edges. Others drift quietly. They don't crash into us. They linger, like the dust at L5, like a whisper we almost didn't hear. For over 60 years, these ghost moons have hovered at the edge of discovery, tempting and taunting us in equal measure. Too faint to be obvious, too persistent to be forgotten. We chased them across decades, not because they promised power or danger, but because they asked us to look closer. And isn't that what makes them so human? We look up at the night sky searching for answers, but maybe the most important questions lie in what we can barely see. Maybe the ghost moons are less about dust and light, and more about our relationship with the unknown. They remind us that wonder doesn't always arrive with certainty. Sometimes it comes in shadows, in silence, in the things that almost weren't. And yet, there they are. Maybe what we call a ghost is just something we haven't learned how to see yet. Maybe the universe is full of these quiet presences, not invisible, but overlooked, waiting not for belief, but for understanding. Here, in the space between the Earth and the Moon, something ancient still drifts, something vast and gentle, something real, and it's still teaching us how to see. Thank you for joining us on this journey through cosmic fog and forgotten questions. If you felt a spark of awe, a pull toward mystery, subscribe to Mysterious Universe. Hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. And tell us in the comments, what do you think hides just beyond sight? Because in this universe, the most beautiful truths often begin as shadows. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and keep listening for what the silence is trying to say.